One of my ancestors was famous English King Edward III, but I don't have a title. That was until the good people at Established Titles reached out. Established Titles is a project based on an historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. Purchasing as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land on the private noble estate at Edelston, Scotland, makes you a lord or lady. You will receive a unique plot number and a lovely certificate, and Established Titles also plants 1 tree with every order, and work with global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support global reforestation efforts. You could officially change your name to Lord or Lady and get it on your credit card, plane ticket, and so on. You can even get it on your dating profiles. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is now running a great Labor Day sale. Plus, if you use the code MarkFelton, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/MarkFelton to get your gifts now and help support the channel. At the end of episode 1, we left the story when the breakout from Hitler's bunker was about to commence, the night of the 1st of May 1945, the day after Hitler's death. SS Brigadeführer Wilhelm Mohnke, commanding the forces defending the Reich Chancellery area, had organized 10 escape groups, Martin Bormann being in group number 3. So where were the escape groups heading? What was the route out of the Soviet encirclement of the city? Mohnke decided that the key to getting through was to travel largely underground, using the U-Bahn railway tunnels, where thousands of civilians had already taken shelter and which the Soviets were very wary of entering at this time. The direction would be northwest, under the river Spree, and into the working-class district of Wedding, and thence to a rendezvous in a wooded area near Schwerin, north of the Elbe River, 80 miles northwest of Berlin. From there, Mohnke's plan was to continue on to German-held territory in the north, and Grand Admiral Dönitz's headquarters in Schleswig-Holstein. Mohnke and Bormann carried the original Hitler documents, his last will and testament that had to be hand-delivered to Dönitz, as well as a protocol drawn up by Reich Chancellor Goebbels before his suicide earlier in the day. A final message sent to Dönitz seems to confirm Mohnke's plan and Bormann's part in it. At 2:46 p.m. on the 1st of May 1945, Goebbels had sent a message to Dönitz informing him of Hitler's death the day before and his appointment as Reich President. One line in Goebbels' message reads, quote, "Reichsleiter Bormann intends to go to you today and to inform you of the situation." End quote. So this is the motive for Bormann's attempts to escape the bunker in a breakout group that same night. He still had a role to play in the Nazi government, and he intended to go to Dönitz and take his place within that last Nazi government that still controlled some of northern Germany, all of Denmark and Norway, and half of the Netherlands. Returning to the actual breakout, it had been decided that they would depart between 10:30 and 11 p.m. using darkness as cover. Most of the escapers wore military uniforms. They largely abandoned any fancy party uniforms and armbands for plain SS or Wehrmacht field grey, steel helmets, and plenty of small arms. Witnesses report that Bormann was dressed in either his brown party uniform without insignia, which seems very foolish, or his SS Obergruppenführer's field grey uniform, Bormann being an honorary SS general, or even in civilian clothing, as some members of the escape groups were wearing. There are several immediate problems with this. Firstly, how could so many witnesses, all of whom had known Bormann every day for weeks, months, or even years, not been consistent regarding how he was dressed from the breakout? It can be explained in a variety of ways. People were looking only to their own survival. They were under considerable stress, or they were recalling the events in retrospect and mixing up how they recalled Bormann dressing in the days preceding the breakout. Secondly, it makes no sense for a man like Bormann, who was the senior surviving Nazi leader in Berlin on the 1st of May 1945, to attempt to make a very dangerous evasion through an active battlefield dressed in either of his usual uniforms. The brown NSDAP uniform would have simply marked him out as a senior leader, and he may just as well have painted a giant target on his back. Wearing his SS general's uniform was likewise foolish. The chances that his escape group might have to bluff its way past Soviet patrols was high. So any uniform that drew attention to one's real status was counterproductive. Bormann was not a stupid man. He was also almost 45 years old, portly, balding, and would never have been mistaken for a frontline soldier. Some investigators mentioned that he was wearing a field-grey uniform stripped of insignia, which would have been sensible, allowing him to pose as an older Volkssturm Home Guardsman, ditto with civilian clothing. Anyway, the clothing issue is just the first of many such problems with Bormann's attempt to escape Berlin. The first two escape groups followed the same route away from the bunker. Group 1, of 20 men and 4 women, led by General Mohnke, included Bormann's secretary Else Krüger, Hitler's adjutant Sturmbannführer Günscher, and Hitler's cook and his 2 secretaries. Group number 3, which contained Bormann, also included Hitler's pilot, Hans Bauer, and his second pilot, Bates, Goebbels' adjutant, SS Hauptsturmführer Gunther Schwägermann, and one of Hitler's doctors, Ludwig Stumpfegger. Group 4, behind, was supposedly led by Hitler Youth leader Arthur Axmann, but he ended up with Bormann's group. The first stage in the journey was a 100-meter dash under fire from the bunker to the Kaiserhof U-Bahn station. They made it under cover of darkness, smoke and rubble. They then walked along the tunnel to Stadtmitte station. By the time Mohnke's group reached Stadtmitte, only about 15 people remained, the rest having made themselves scarce. At Stadtmitte station, U-Bahn carriages were being used as an emergency operating theatre. Mohnke's group allegedly was forced to surface at Friedrichstrasse station due to the tunnel beyond being sealed by a huge metal bulkhead, guarded by 2 railway employees who refused to open it. We are to believe that Mohnke's heavily armed group of desperate SS and party officials argued futilely with the railway guards and meekly gave up and went up to the street, which was an active battle zone. Seems a bit unlikely. It was noted by other escapers that this barrier was open an hour later. As for Bormann's group, they missed an important turn in the tunnel halfway between Stadtmitte and Friedrichstrasse stations. They backtracked to Stadtmitte and decided to come up to street level at the Gendarmenmarkt, opposite the Max Reinhardt Theatre. But progress was clearly too dangerous. Descending back into the station, they tried to get to Friedrichstrasse again moving above ground. At the Weitendamm Bridge, they discovered that their way forward was blocked by a tank barrier. Here things become very confused. Apparently, a Tiger tank or tanks was active at the bridge, part of the SS Nordland division, and had made an attempt to force their way across under heavy Soviet fire to clear a path for many German troops and civilians trying to escape behind them. Many testimonies claim that Bormann was actually riding in a Tiger tank that was hit by a captured German Panzerfaust rocket launcher and destroyed. This story was first published in English by respected British historian and World War II intelligence officer Major Hugh Trevor Roper in his seminal work, The Last Days of Hitler, first published in 1953. His main witness appears to have been Erich Kempke, Hitler's chauffeur, who ran the Reich Chancellery garage. In his book, I Burned Adolf Hitler, published in 1950, Kempke said that he saw Bormann riding in the tank that was seconds later totally destroyed by the anti-tank weapon. Kempke was sure that Bormann was killed. Kempke managed to make it to freedom at the Elbe River, where he was arrested by the US Army. The major problems with the Kempke story are obvious. Firstly, if Bormann was riding in the Tiger tank, Kempke could not have seen him in battle conditions. The tank would have had all hatches closed and locked. Secondly, there is no space aboard a Tiger for passengers. The only way Bormann could have been inside the tank was if a crewman gave up his seat. Considering that the tank was seen fighting its way over the bridge, presumably Bormann had taken a secret panzer gunnery course so he could replace the gunner or loader in the Tiger's turret. The biggest howler is even placing Bormann in a tank in the first place. A huge Tiger would have been the focus of Soviet fire and been lashed with anti-tank shells, captured Panzerfausts, machine gun and rifle fire, with its immobilization or destruction a distinct possibility. So what about the Tiger tank or tanks in question? SS Gruppenführer Gustav Krukenberg, who was commanding the Nordland division in the area, gave testimony that 5 of his tanks were ordered by him to smash their way through the Weidendam Bridge barrier at 2 a.m. on the 2nd of May 1945, and that they successfully pushed on further up the Friedrichstrasse, engaging Soviet forces. Krukenberg had no knowledge of Bormann in or on one of his tanks, and there were no other German tanks in the vicinity. However, other German witnesses gave different versions of the Bormann Tiger tank story. Hitler's pilot, Hans Bauer, was later captured by the Soviets and spent years in Moscow being brutally interrogated regarding Hitler's whereabouts and fate. Bauer claimed to Trevor Roper, after he had returned from captivity, that Bormann had definitely been killed when the Tiger tank had exploded. A story also confirmed by SS Major Heinz Linger, Hitler's valet, who also was captured by the Red Army and held for 10 years. But after Bauer had started discussing things with Arthur Axmann, the Hitler Youth leader who joined Bormann's group from the group behind, and who ultimately successfully escaped from Berlin and was later apprehended by the Americans in Bavaria, Bauer's story changed in the late 1950s. Bauer now claimed that Bormann had not been killed by the tank explosion, and that he had even accompanied Bormann further along the escape route. Historians subsequently altered Bauer's testimony to fit Axmann's story, who became the Allied star witness to the events surrounding Bormann's disappearance. Bauer claimed that Bormann had gone ahead, but that he, Bauer, had caught up with him sitting on the stone steps of a bombed-out house. The location Bauer gave was the corner of Schiffbauerdamm and Friedrichstrasse, on the Soviet side of the Weidendam Bridge. Bauer, Axmann, and Goebbels' adjutant Gunther Schwegemann said that the remainder of Group 3 moved along the Schiffbauerdamm towards the Lehrte railway station, a very dangerous route that would have taken them past the Reichstag, which was surrounded by Soviet troops at the time. Bauer had actually been wounded in both legs as he tried to clamber down onto the road from the railway bridge over the Humboldt harbour. Bauer stated that he last saw Bormann when the group was opposite the Reichstag, standing on the Lehrte railway tracks half a mile from the station. He reported that Bormann and Dr. Stumpfegger broke away from the group and walked east along Invalidenstrasse towards the Stettiner station. But if Bauer was wounded before reaching this point near the Lehrte station, this testimony is also suspect. The next important piece of testimony concerning Bormann's movements came from Arthur Axmann. He claimed that during the tank battle at the Weidendam Bridge, he had taken cover in a shell hole, finding Bormann, Werner Naumann, Gunther Schwegemann, Bauer and Stumpfegger also doing the same. Moving along the railway tracks towards the Lehrte station, Axmann claimed that as they jumped down from a bridge over the Friedrich-List-Ufer west of the Humboldt harbour, the bridge leading to the Lehrte S-Bahn station, several of the party landed among some Soviet infantry camped beneath it. They were surrounded. The Soviets were friendly and fascinated by Axmann's artificial arm, he having lost his arm when serving as a soldier on the Eastern Front. They offered the Germans cigarettes. Clearly, they thought this group of largely middle-aged Germans, dressed in a strange variety of outfits, to be harmless Volkssturm home guardsmen. However, Axmann stated that Bormann and Stumpfegger moved away and then ran off shortly afterwards, the Soviets becoming suspicious. Axmann and his friend Major Gunther Veltzin did likewise. Moving east up Invalidenstrasse, Axmann claimed to have found the bodies of Bormann and Stumpfegger lying behind the bridge where Invalidenstrasse crosses the railway line. The Lehrte station and the surrounding bridges have all been knocked down and rebuilt in 2005-6, and all of the original buildings to do with the Bormann escape have now been destroyed. Axmann described how Bormann and Stumpfegger were both lying on their backs, apparently dead, but with no visible wounds in the moonlight. He was apparently certain that both men had killed themselves with poison. Neither he nor Major Veltzin took their pulses, and they quickly moved on. The problem with this story is the timeline. Axmann and historians who have repeated these claims all agree that the touching scene occurred between 1:30 and 2 a.m., whereas multiple testimonies claim that the tank battle at the Weidendam Bridge occurred at about 2:30 a.m. It doesn't make sense. Axmann's testimony was obviously wrong. Other writers have pointed out that Axmann behaved strangely when he allegedly discovered Bormann's body. Axmann knew that Bormann was in possession of Hitler's last will and testament and other very important documents, yet he made no effort to retrieve these documents from the corpse. Another big problem for the Bormann death scene was that no one else reported seeing the two bodies laying on the ground in the position reported by Axmann. They simply weren't there. They disappeared into thin air. Following Axmann's alleged sighting of the two bodies, Martin Bormann was not seen in Berlin again until 1972, when his skull was found under rather fishy circumstances close to where Axmann said he had last seen the body. Next time, the Bormann sightings. Was Bormann seen alive after 1945, and where? Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.